Recording in progress.
So I listened to a
Um,
podcast just yesterday, and I was telling Mike about it yesterday or this morning, and it was just funny because like he's going over like all these finance principles basically, and just his take on the modern day person trying to get their finances in order, make some investments, have some savings and all that. And it's like just like anything, if you've known something for a long time, you think it to be common sense, and that's just not always the case. A lot of the stuff he shared wasn't really that groundbreaking for me, and I know it wouldn't be for you either. But the one point that he did talk about was just really like making sure that when you do make a financial decision, especially a bigger one, and maybe this is what prompted me to sign up for Monarch the way I did yesterday, was just to start being like more intentional
mhm.
about spending, saving, and investing. And one of his principles was, and I took away from it too, which is why I think I also started getting on that app, is be way more intentional about investing. I feel like I've been really good about like 401k. I set up that life insurance with a cash accumulation through my dad and another post tax account. But my own individual saving slash investing could go a lot farther and be a lot more intentional. But he basically was talking about how buying a house doesn't have to be the best or worst decision, and neither does renting. Like, you are a great example of what you're about to do, where renting just makes sense for your
Mhm.
situation, and not even monetary stuff being considered. Look at the flexibility you'll have. You
Mhm.
guys can maybe move around each year up there if you wanted to until you settle down. You can come back in a few years without the burden of having a property that you own across the country. No home ownership. So, there's
Yeah, the
pros and
repairs
cons.
and really just like literally like keeping a whole house clean versus keeping an apartment clean.
Yeah.
Like how
Like,
much time it's consuming, and that's what really led us to move from owning a house here and wanting to rent out there. Is we actually looked at our whole life instead of just like our financial life, and we looked at our whole life and like what do we actually want from this time over there, and which decision of those best aligns with that. Financially, buying a house probably would make more sense, but it's not worth it get knowing what we would like have to give up otherwise in terms of quality of life that we're looking for.
yeah, plus just factor in the amount of time that you'll be out there. Well, okay, you're a unique situation with the VA loan. Most people don't have that, I would say. So, what would be the just saying you did put a lump sum down?
Yeah.
How amortize that across a few years? How much would that money have made in the market potentially? What's rent compared to what mortgage would be? When you factor all that in and you add in the genuine day to day life relief from owning a house. You don't have to cut the grass. Cleaning's
Yeah.
more manageable.
If an appliance breaks, like I don't have to get my tools out and fix it or pay someone a lot of
Yeah,
money to do it. It's
dude, I know. And
like I spent 2021, what is 2024? Yeah, 3 years in Charleston. And I can't believe on how much like upon reflection, how much life I missed out on because of how much time I spent either one, putting like manual effort into my house, two, cleaning my house, or three, just having such a big house like for myself where I was comfortable just staying here because I had room to get out. Like I could go out in the backyard or I could go out here, which are all really great things. I learned so much from like the physical effort I put into this house. I've learned how to do like electricity and water plumbing and so many different things, drywall and all these things, which are very valuable skills to have. Plus, it just like taught me to think about things differently, and including like just taking care of a house in terms of cleaning it, you know,
mhm.
and like having the solitude to just like think without like people around me was really nice, particularly while I was in grad school and tired all the time. Like it was great. And at the same time, it's not how I want to live my life going forward. Like it really did take away from making more meaningful friendships here, spending time really enjoying the beach here in the city here, like a very cool city with beautiful beaches and incredible culture, restaurants that like I just really didn't get to experience because of that, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what we want in our next move that I didn't have now. And if I didn't have this time period, I wouldn't value that so much going forward. So at no point do I regret this.
Right.
It's just it was appropriate for now, and going forward, it's not what's appropriate next.
And the good news is it didn't come without financial gain,
Yeah.
life
Knowledge,
experience
experience, yeah.
gain. Like you said, you have all these new skills. You got a nice chunk of change that you can use to propel you forward in life now financially. And this was like a place that you had that arguably was the home of where a ton of changes happened to you that might not happen again as drastic as.
Yeah, man, for sure. Like I mean, I could go endlessly of like the
Yeah.
experiences I've had in this house, you know, from being frustrated and stressed out and in tears because of life stressors or grad school to having a space where I could have my friends from grad school and otherwise come over without worrying about getting, you know, we don't have to, someone has an apartment and someone else has a family. So I had a whole house that we could have house parties in, that we could have a fire in. And so it was a point of gathering for the friends I did have, which was wonderful. And yeah, like it taught me. And then Ruby, you know, like I got my dog here and she had a space in the backyard. And if I didn't have this house, I probably wouldn't have got this incredible dog that I now have a wonderful relationship with, you know, or even like when Bria and I started dating, we had a place to come where we could just be genuine with each other and
Hmm.
relaxed. You know, we're not out at a restaurant, we're not out at a bar, we're not just in some like stuffy apartment. We could just hang out here, and she felt comfortable just coming here and doing
Yeah.
homework in a different room while I'm here, you know?
Some stuffy apartment. Had to throw that in.
But yeah, so I absolutely don't regret it by any means. But I think a part of growth in any stage is knowing what to take with you and what to leave behind. And a lot of times, what we leave behind is a lot more than what we take with us through the stages of our
Yeah.
growth in life.
Um, we can come back to this, but it reminded me, I just at some point soon I want to sit down with you. And another reason that this Monarch money was something I wanted to do was, and I told Revu after I got everything squared away yesterday, I would like to potentially get a spot closer to her. I don't think
Mhm.
buying's going to be an option unless I just go crazy with Tracker and start selling so much that I have
Yeah.
so much money to go around. Um, but I want to sit down and make a really conscious decision and a responsible one about, do I sell this house? Do I just keep it empty as a place to come once a week and keep paying the mortgage? Do I rent it out? So that's a big decision I have coming up in probably 6 months or so or less.
Yeah, man. I think that's a very tough decision because like it's just there's not a wrong answer, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's incredible to me how many people who are older and wiser than me have just simply said in one shape or another, "Hey, make a pros and cons list." Like how that tool and it can be made a million different ways, you know. But how simple that tool like really is effective in helping us make decisions. And that's what we did because originally we were wanting to rent. So I called a rental agency and I figured out how much we were going to get from rent. And then I factored in like the potential for risk and financial. Plus, like then we talked about the life factors of, hey, what does that do to our lives, obligation and responsibility wise that we don't have if we sell? So I took all those into account and I did the same thing with selling and we made an informed decision.
It was just,
And once
was
all
it
the information was in front of us, it became glaring that
that's
selling
what I
was
was
the
gonna
right
say.
option
Was
for
it
us.
so clear that you're like, oh my gosh, now that I have it all laid in front of me, it's a
Yes.
no-brainer.
Yes. And I think that's what it is, man. If we're having trouble making decisions, it's probably because we don't have enough information. So get more information and the decision's probably going to become clear usually. Now, I think we also have to understand I like weighted pros and cons lists. So even if I were to like do this with a client, for instance, I would put them pros, I would put cons, and then I would have them on a scale from 0 to 10 next to each item in each column, rate how important, 0 being not important at all, 10 being the most important, that factor is. So now you can see if there's 3 10s over here and 4 1s over here, even though there's 4 versus 3, this is weighted a little bit more. You know what I mean? And so you can go by individual ratings, and then you can also go by cumulative ratings in each column. And so even though like the finance might be a 6 out of 10 for you on each one, important, but the convenience of having your own home by not selling and by having that investment for the future, not even financially, but just as a space, that might be like really important to you. You might find out through that process, and you might
Right.
weight that a little different. That doesn't mean you have to base the whole decision on that, but you do want to weight that appropriately, like
Yeah.
from all sides.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm happy to like, yeah, talk
Yeah,
about this. And
I think it's more so just more conversations isn't going to be bad. It's going to put more
yeah,
information out there for me. And when the time comes, I'll just know that whatever decision I make, it's the one that I was okay with. And I think the only one that I would really regret is if I did sell it. Like, I'm not going to regret keeping it because if at any given time I decide oh my God, why'd I keep this thing? I can just put it up on the market.
yeah, yeah. Now, obviously, the only risk with that is if like somehow you get stuck in a really bad market, get laid off, now you have a job and you can't afford the house for some reason.
Yeah.
But if that's happening, there's a lot of bad things happening.
I was
So
to say,
it's not
yeah.
like I don't think that's an appropriate. I think it's a consideration to have, but not like appropriate to base a decision on.
Right. And I'm also already like, I already told Ravu, told myself, anyone that's asking, I'm saving the full year worth of rent there before I ever even decide to make the move, or at least dang close,
Yeah, that's very
so that
smart. I wouldn't even think about that. That's really smart.
so that if the worst happens, like I was preparing for it for essentially years, losing my job. And I always threw in if I lost my job and needed to get my car repaired, I want to be able to fix that. And
Yeah,
sure enough, that was exactly what happened.
yeah,
Literally, like you were down there for the wedding, the wreck happened. I had to drop probably $800 plus all said and done, which is still in um forget
subrogation.
the subrogation or yeah. So but then because I was off for 3 months between unemployment and the money I saved up, I was chilling, honestly.
Yeah,
I was chilling and I want to set myself up
which
for that again if
yeah,
it ever
man.
happens.
Isn't that so cool? Where it's just like, hey, if you're thinking about tomorrow, today, not exclusively about because you still want to live your life, but that means like when disaster strikes, it's not actually a crisis. It's still it's stressful, but you're like, hey, I have time. And that's what like I think so many people, particularly in our country, do poorly is they have access to healthcare or not healthcare, but to finances. And even if they're like strapped for it, you can always tighten up your budget a little bit. You can always figure out like a way. And I'm not saying that that's easy, nor that like it's feasible, because realistically, like some people are in really tough situations.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you're not in that tough situation if you think about if you plan for it a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh my god. And the exciting thing about it is with the track record of things like the S&P 500 just to keep it simple, and you start to show someone that hey, don't think of your small sacrifice as a small sacrifice. It's a small sacrifice now that will compound in ways that you never imagined before. So don't
Yes.
think of like, oh, I can only actually cut out $50. And I'm talking about like a person that genuinely has kids, mortgage, rent, whatever. Like they could only cut back on something that they didn't truly need and save $50. That $50 a month in 20 years, it's like, it sounds crazy, but it's not sexy, but it's powerful.
Yeah. 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 No, and that's it's just like such a flaw of the human mind to not be able to think like that and to think about the here and now. And so it's so much easier to be like, oh well, that $50, well, we don't, invest that and just throw it away. It's like, well, it's not throwing it away. Yes, you could use that to buy the other two things here, or maybe have like a decent dinner out with like your partner. But what if you could like adjust that and maybe not go out for dinner, but maybe pack a nice picnic and make your date like quality, but less
Right.
expensive.
There's always a solution.
Yes. And then that $50, like, yeah, it's not gonna look good today, but it's incredible what time as an investment can do. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, the S&P 500 is perfect because anytime it's went down, all you have to do is zoom out and it's still far greater than it was a year or two or
Ideally,
five
yeah.
ago.
10
Yeah.
plus years ago.
Which is just like genuinely how we should think about investments in life. Like even when I bought the house here, it made sense financially. And then every time I put in work in this house, like I wasn't like, oh, I'm so excited to go under the crawl space again and do this. And I'm so excited to replace the fan. And I'm so excited to paint the walls again. But it was beginning with the end in mind. I knew I wanted to sell this or rent it out. So it had to be in a better place than when I got it. And over the course of 3 years, that's a lot easier to do than the last 2 months. Because even so, in the last 2 months, we still had a lot of work to do. But if I didn't do any of that beforehand, like it would have been really tough. And so it's almost like our physical work and is an investment as well. Um, but we get distracted by like work and jobs that aren't actually investments. They are for the here and now, and so we get so trained to do something and get a result, do something and get paid, do something and get paid. But in reality, like if you want to get out of that cycle, you have to break it intentionally by thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah. Something else I decided to take away from that podcast was really, and I think I already alluded to this earlier, was make investments as equal a priority as a payment to yourself, as a payment to your car lender, to your
Mhm.
mortgage lender. That's a non-negotiable. And I feel like I've been good again, like I said, with 401k and the couple of things I had set up with my dad. But as soon as I felt like, like I'm not as where I want to be with money, like boom, Robinhood gets paused. Or boom, like I'll bump this down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I should be adjusting based on what I want financially in 20 years or whatever. Like I would rather make other sacrifices than that sacrifice because those other sacrifices aren't going to pay me the way that that one will if I maintain. Like I have an aggressive goal aside from what I have in 401k and with my dad, $50 a day into the S&P 500 through that VOO. I would love to maintain that, and everything that I did setting up my budget was also just based on my base salary. And then I'm hoping that commission is a small buffer each month to do a little extra few fun things. But the
Mhm.
rest of that then also needs to be put somewhere smart for long term and or
Yeah.
savings.
I think we began this conversation talking about like how um just that kind of stint we had together while I was back up in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
and you stayed with me, like really kind of initiated that. And I think that was the time in my life when I really jumped on finances and like thinking about financial future. Um, and the thing that I've learned probably over the last year, and I'm continuing to learn and I'm applying that learning through renting in Colorado rather than buying, is that sometimes time is the investment that we have to also care about, and sometimes that is at the cost of money, you know. Um, and so I think it's like a really hard balance to find, and I think once you're adept with money, it becomes evident that like money is not the most valuable thing. Time is actually the most valuable thing. And so that means like, even though I am very tight on my budget, every now and then I do want to go out for a nice dinner with my wife because we deserve that, and I'll spend $100 for that, but I'm not going to make a habit of it weekly,
Right.
which makes it more special when we do it, but also is rewarding. It invests quality time into our relationship and
That's
to our joy.
that's the biggest piece right there is that when you do it, it's that much better. When it's happening all the time, it's not as nice. Like, oh great, we're going to get hibachi again. Like,
Yes.
do you remember how awesome going to get Ichiban was when we were growing up? Was that
Yeah.
something your family did?
Not my family, but I had friends like,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
like, dude, there's a Sakura and Shogun now, but I remember like we didn't go to Ichiban unless it was like somebody's birthday.
yes.
It
Yeah,
wasn't just a
we had that with we did the Fire Mountain and Chippewa.
dude.
Yeah.
Fire Mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking back, Fire Mountain was probably like an upgraded Eaton Park, but it didn't
Yeah.
matter. It
Yeah.
was a destination that we were excited to go. And
Yes.
like, I miss that about so many things, like even TV shows once a week for an hour with commercials.
Yes.
Get back in here, get your water, come back. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
things like that, like
Yeah, man.
that delayed gratification, essentially.
Yeah, and that truly is like the joy of life. You know, that brings community back to it. We've just been overburdened with like convenience, and we take it for granted.
Yeah.
Um,
Dang.
okay. I think there's a lot more to this conversation, but I have to go to the bathroom very badly. So
We can wrap it, man. It's been an hour and 15, and I get some work done here.
okay, man. Well, I love you. I'm glad the job's going well and things are going well. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Keep me updated on that thing we were talking about in the beginning. Love you too, buddy. And yeah, we'll talk soon, man.
All right, man.
Tell Bria I said hey. Bye bye.
I will. Bye bye.